Good afternoon, viewers. Another personality, another profile with me. We have honored that our guest has started his life career from steel industry and then finished with fireman. Today's guest is Robert Addenbrooke. Robert, welcome in our show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Robert, please tell our viewers about your childhood and your early education.
Well, I was born and bred in Sheffield, in Pittsmore. From an early age, I went to Thurshill School, which is now Abbeyfield Academy now. And then from there, I went to Ola Lane, which is now Fairvale. And then I went to the Central Technical School in Sheffield. That's when you took your 13 plus. I failed my 11 plus, but I took my 13 plus. And I studied basically engineering at school from the age of 13. And then from there, I went into the steelworks at Firth Browns.
So, do you have any ideal that you are following somebody that such and such engineer, such and such craftsman is my ideal, or just it is Sheffield and it's a steel industry, you followed this career?
Yeah, I think we were basically guided into the industry, you know, one way or the other, because the industry was such a vast family, basically. But yeah, you know, my brother went into the steelworks. He's older than me, and we got relatives. They were managers in the steelworks. But my father was a grocer, and I did work at the age of 13. I worked for a grocer. I actually worked in Banner's food hall at the age of 15. That Banner's store used to be a well-known store in Sheffield, and they had a supermarket in the basement, and that's where I worked when I was 15. I was still at school.
So today's Sheffield and at that time Sheffield,
yeah.
How you will say, what is the comparison?
It's like any city, any country. Things have changed dramatically over the period of time. Some for the good and some for the bad. When I worked in the steelworks, the pollution was terrible. You know, people lived in houses that you could fall out of bed and fall into work, but you were covered in black. Yeah, everybody were black. You know, I mean, I turned up I used to come out to work and were covered in black dust. But you look at it now, and it's a clean city. So we've altered the industry that Sheffield used to be. You know,
the downfall of the steel industry. Do you think that the government could have done better to save this industry? Because when we took the historical books or historical reference, Sheffield was very famous because of steel industry.
Yeah, I mean, Sheffield's always been renowned for its making the best special steels. I think coal parties were at fault. You know, I used to be in the union. I was a member of the Amalgamated Union of Engineering Workers, and the unions were very strong in that day. But when you look back, I mean, the firms that were family-owned, a lot of the firms were family-owned, and they were better then because they looked after the workers. And then, you know, big consortiums took over, and basically they were in it for profit. So they took the work to where they could gain the most profit, and that had a big impact on Sheffield.
So at what stage you moved from steel industry to another job?
Well, I left Firth Browns in 1977, and I went to work for a German company called Young Heinrich, and they're now the biggest fork truck manufacturer in the world. And it was a culture shock because I'd gone from the English way of working to the German way of working, and you had to do everything. But it was a good learning curve, and they're a good company to work for.
So it was based in Sheffield or anywhere
Based in Sheffield, yeah, near Parkway, on the Parkway, opposite the Macro. You know, we were there. I was there so in total I was working it out on the way in. I did about 13, 14 years there, but I did move. I moved to Bird's Eye. I was a site engineer for Young Heinrich, and I moved to Hull, where I had my oldest son. And then I did move to another site and set another site up in South Emsall, which is near Wakefield.
So in different industries, your job description was different, or you have similar role?
Similar, yeah. I was basically, my job, I was maintenance. I was a maintenance engineer at Firth Browns. I worked on the locomotives and everything to do with the diesel engine. And then when I went to work for Young Heinrich, I worked on all electric fork trucks. So, you know, I worked in big companies like Unilever and Birdseye, which was the same company, Argos. You know, they're really big. They used to get all the big contracts.
So when you joined the fire service then?
Well, from 1992, I did the 92, 93. I did voluntary work for Sheffield Council. I assessed all the minibus drivers for the European Swimming Championships. And then from that, I got a job driving what they call the white buses, the buses that pick up people with disabilities. I did that for 4 years. That was only part-time, and then a job came up in the fire service. So I applied, and of course it was like a transfer, because he was still working for the local authority or South Yorkshire. So I joined the fire service in 1997.
So I noticed you really enjoyed this job because it was a challenge, you took it.
Yeah.
And how many years you worked with this service?
Altogether, about 20 years, when I look back. Because I worked for South Yorkshire, and then I moved to Barnsley Council as their fire advisor for 2 years. Then I went into Derbyshire Fire Service, and then I finished in Greater Manchester.
When we look at the structure of the fire service,
Yeah.
so what is the difference in the past and today? Have they made substantial changes, or it is same?
No, I mean, there's not as many staff. There's not. I mean, I'm not only just talking about firefighters, I'm talking about everybody that supports an organisation like that. They have advanced in technology as well, different ways of fighting fires. They don't fight fires now, they put them out basically, or try and prevent them occurring. And that was the job I did. I was a fire safety inspector. I was one of the first non-uniformed in South Yorkshire, where I actually went into this building and gave them advice on to make it safe so a fire would never happen, or potentially never happen.
So technology has made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
So how technology has worked and helped the minimize the risks in the life, and also especially for the buildings and the business?
Yeah. Well, basically now you've got all these new fire alarm systems, security. You've got sprinklers, you've got misting systems, you've got air sampling systems that can sample the air, that can tell if it's dust or if it's smoke particles. And that's technology, you know. I mean, you've got wireless systems now where you've no need to put cables in. You've got infrared beams, you've got robotics. You know, I mean, now they've got robots that can go into buildings. And also a friend of mine, he's got a dog. He's a fire investigation officer that's got a dog that goes in. They send the dogs in to smell any accelerants and also search for people as well.
So do you think in the advanced age, in coming years, that the robots could work like a fireman, or they can go and rescue the people and they can help?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean, I've seen evidence of that. I saw a programme about Dubai a couple of weeks ago, and it showed you the police force in Dubai, and lots of those are robots. They're using the drones, and the fire service are now using drones as well. So, you know, if they can send a drone up and pinpoint where the fire is, that's saving, potentially putting a human life into that building. So, yeah, you know.
Have you ever imagined that the technology will be so fast? You know, if let's say we talk about 20 years ago, and now when you talk about the technology, reports, all these new gadgets. No.
I remember getting my first mobile phone about 20 years ago, and they call it a brick, and it was basic, you know, just being able to dial a number. But you look at technology now, you know, I've got a basic Android, I've got an iPhone at home. You can do anything with them, you know, recording people, videoing people.
I was having a laughter with a friend. I said, apart from a kitchen, you have everything in your in gadgets and the phones.
Yeah,
everything is there.
Yeah. You look inside your own car, you've got all the gadgets there, haven't you? The other day, I got my iPhone out. I was in Pontefract, and I found out I got sat-nav on it. So I took my old sat-nav away, and I've got sat-nav on my iPhone, and it talks to you. It's brilliant.
Robert, when we look at the building regulations,
yeah.
when any company is developing or design or a map of a building, the most important thing is obviously the risks.
Yeah.
So how the fire service and the building regulation department works closely to each other?
Yeah. Well, basically, when a developer produces a set of plans for a building, that they have to go through building control or an approved inspector. They don't always have to go through building control. But approved inspectors are potentially ex-building control officers. They then have a duty bound to consult the fire service to pass comment about fire strategy, location of fire alarms, firefighting equipment, and that's set in the building regulations about consultation.
But do you think that there is always a room of improvements in this coordination, or do you think it's working well? Because you have worked a number of years with these departments, so you can comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, there is under the old regulations, the Fire Precautions Act 1971, that was the old Fire Safety Act. And then that got changed in 2005 under the Fire Safety Order. And a lot of fire officers, and I was one of them, we had reservations about the Fire Safety Order because it put the emphasis on the owner of the building to make sure that the building was safe. And it's same with the people that draw the plans. You can draw plans up in Devon, submit them to an approved inspector in Devon, and technically they should be accepted in Sheffield. But it's all about your interpretation, your experience. Is that standard the same standard as we've got in Sheffield? Sheffield was always very good. The building control officers, the fire officers as well, they had dedicated officers that just dealt with plans. Like a building like this, like Meadowhall, and they had a very good relationship, but due to cutbacks, they've reduced the number of building control officers and also the number of fire officers, because now it is all risk-based, risk assessment. So,
but still, it's the risk assessments and all this, but I think the central government should come forward and help the local government, because at the end of the day, these two departments are working for the safety of life, and I think the most precious thing in the world is the lives. So they are working for the safety of the human lives.
That is the main thing that the fire service are responsible for: life safety, not property. They're there to save lives. And I totally agree with you. I think you can cut back too much, and I don't mean cut back on resources, but personnel, personnel or resources technically. But you still, you've only to look at Sheffield, how many buildings are going up in Sheffield, compared to the number of officers that we used to have, the time constraints, sometimes the buildings are already being used when the fire officers are walking in. And I've experienced that where I've gone to a building to look at the plans and it's been occupied.
So what do you recommend that, especially the people who are watching us being a landlord, or especially in the hotel or the takeaway industries, because obviously these all people have to do fire and risk assessment of their buildings and also their businesses. So what do you guide them? What is your golden principle? Just few words advice for them.
My advice is you can get free advice from the fire service. You can download a load of information from the fire service, read it and implement it. And if you're not sure how to implement it, get expert advice. And it doesn't mean going to a consultant. You can always contact the fire service and their advice is free. Ultimately though, it could cost you money, but they will only ask for the minimum standard. But that standard is enough to keep that building and the people safe.
A technical question. In the restaurant and big kitchens, there is always a fire exit. Is it compulsory that door must be open, or it is only that in case of emergency, God forbid, that easily it can be accessed and it can be open? Or what are the...
No, from the fire service point of view, no, the door can be closed, providing it can be opened easily. But you've got other issues. You've got your environmental health officers. You've got their requirements as well. I'm not saying that they won't say, because if you think about a kitchen, you've got a lot of smoke, lots of heat, and then most kitchens have ventilation systems which draw all that heat out and the fumes and the smells. So no, because then if you bring in something else into it, then if you leave your door open, you're open to somebody breaching security. You could get people coming in that you don't want coming in.
So, Rob, nowadays, what are your commitments in these? So,
well, I still advise several charities. You know, I'm involved in several charities in Sheffield and Rotherham. I don't actually work in the fire safety field anymore. I still go on conferences and I still keep up to date on all the legislation, but actually, you know, I work for the government now.
So, any other hobbies you have apart from reading books and keeping you update with the information?
Yeah, I like travelling. Tonight, after this, I'm going down to my caravan in Lincolnshire, and I just like making sure people are safe. I like helping. I enjoy it. So,
how is the experience life in caravan? So, if you are traveling from A to B, B to C, so how is this experience?
Because I'm very good at visualization. I visualize things on the road and in the communities, and that's why I try and help people. I help several projects in Sheffield and Rotherham, and there is a big need out there for people to help other people. But everybody's going to be in need at some time. You know, I mean, it's been a big thing about mental health this last couple of weeks, and that's what I'm involved in Sheffield and Rotherham.
And will you recommend anything for the educational authorities that they should introduce in the studies, especially in the primary or in the higher level?
Yeah.
So any subject for the health and safety more interactive or more easier, because all the time these requirements are changing and I think the risks are increasing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a mind reader, because I think they ought to bring in basic fire safety, first aid, and health and safety. I had a cardiac arrest 18 months ago. The big thing about restart the heart about in schools, about CPR and defibrillation. It ought to be classed as a life skill, and that would give them a good grounding for when they go out into the workplace.
So at the end, what is your message for our viewers?
Keep safe, but enjoy. Enjoy life, but keep safe. And take the advice on board. There's loads of free advice out there. You see it on the news, particularly now with the thing about driving with mobile phones and other issues. But just listen to the free advice that's been given out on media and try and adopt that advice to keep safe and live a longer life.
Robert, thank you very much. Viewers, I hope you have taken the message. Keep safe, keep vigilant, and technology is there, information is there. If you need any help, you can contact fire service, and I will always say the safety first. Keep watching Sheffield Live and keep joining us every week. Thank you.